I think in our recent study with CEOs that led successful transformations, one of the things that struck us when we were looking at them was just how reflective they were. They seemed to have a higher degree or spend more time reflecting on their experiences and the results and what they had learned and making adjustments. And when you listen to their story of how they led the transformation, this occurs throughout the story. They changed, they learned and developed over time. Now, it's not that they always enjoyed it. It was interesting because many of them would get the assessment results back, and they would describe their emotions when they got this assessment back that said they were, 250 points out of 1,000. And of course, the first thing they did was deny the validity of the assessment. This can't possibly be right. My business is making money. I can't be a 25%er. And of course, the longer they thought about it, they then would get angry rather quickly that, this at the instrument and the assessment. All of them persisted and kept using a performance excellence model to assess. And so while they got angry, they then would, after that, would try to bargain. They'd say, well, this part of the feedback is applicable to us, but this really, they don't know us well enough. And they just don't know us and know what we're doing. And eventually, if they hung in there long enough, they got a bit depressed about the whole thing because they realized that the feedback was accurate. And it was only then that they accepted it and got busy working on how to improve it. So some of them went through a couple of cycles of this typical Elizabeth Kubler-Ross grieving cycle, if you will, of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And they got better at it as it went along, and you heard them talk about it. Some of them really got angry, and some of them less so. So it was not the same across the board, but it was interesting that they while they all were highly reflective and learned from the experience, sometimes it was painful during the process. Part of being highly reflective goes back to the common characteristic they all had, was that they were humble but confident. If you think you know everything, you're not inclined to learn very, very much. And so they all had a degree of humility, at least to the point where they didn't think they had all the answers, and were highly reflective in looking for the answers. When it comes to humble but confident, I was recently asked at a presentation by a CEO if he thought you would be able to recognize the CEOs in our study and the fact that they were humble and confident in a social setting. And I think clearly you would. Most business leaders that interact with today are probably more confident in public than they really are. And they have this external armor, if you will, or of confidence, and exude confidence. And that's a useful tool and useful to do that. But the leaders in our study, I think you'd recognize even in a social setting that they didn't think they had all the answers, and they were inquisitive, and they asked a lot of questions of people to learn.